All right, today we are diving into one of the most powerful and really one of the most beautiful ideas in all of science, the tree of life. And we're going to talk about the surprisingly hesitant man who first sketched it out.
So you have to put yourself back in the 19th century. For biologists, the absolute biggest question, what they literally called the mystery of mysteries, was where do all these different species come from? The world was just teeming with this incredible variety of life, but its origin, it was a total black box.
And the world that a young Charles Darwin grew up in had a very neat and tidy answer for this: special creation. The basic idea was that every single species was created exactly as it is today, perfectly designed for its role, and, this is key, it never, ever changes. This wasn't just the belief, it was the foundation of natural history.
Now let's meet young Darwin. And he was not some kind of revolutionary, not at all. He was a Cambridge student who was obsessed with collecting beetles, and his life plan was to become a quiet country parson. But then, in 1831, he gets the opportunity of a lifetime to travel the globe as a naturalist aboard the HMS Beagle.
There's this popular myth that Darwin had some big eureka moment in the Galapagos. But the truth is, he spent 5 long years just methodically collecting thousands and thousands of specimens. When he finally got back to England in 1836, he still fundamentally believed in special creation. The real revolution didn't happen on some exotic island. It happened in a quiet, dusty study back in London.
So Darwin's back in London, and he starts handing over all of his collections to the experts. This is where the real detective work starts. And the most important clues, well, they came from what he thought was a pretty boring collection of birds from the Galapagos Islands.
See, Darwin had collected all these little finches from the different islands, and he really just assumed they were minor variations of the same bird. But he had noticed these subtle, consistent little differences. Some had these dainty, slender beaks perfect for catching insects. Others had these big, tough, crushing beaks that were great for seeds. But what did it all mean? And then, the bombshell. The ornithologist John Gould took one look at these birds and told Darwin something that changed everything. He said, "Charles, these aren't just varieties. These are completely different species. And what's more, each species was found only on its own particular island."
And that was the spark. It was the light bulb moment. Darwin's mind just raced. He realized these island birds all looked a lot like a single type of finch back on the mainland of South America. He figured a single group must have flown over to the islands a long time ago. And then, isolated on these different islands, they changed. They diversified. They became brand new species.
So to try and visualize this radical new idea, Darwin grabbed his private notebook, scribbled 2 little words at the top of the page, "I think," and then he drew this. A messy, simple little sketch that was, in fact, the world's very first evolutionary tree.
I mean, look at it. This simple little diagram held his entire theory. He called it descent with modification. Instead of life being some kind of ladder with simple stuff at the bottom and us at the top, Darwin saw it as a branching tree. All of life was connected, a huge, sprawling family tree. An idea that is now the absolute foundation of all biology.
So how does this tree actually grow? Well, think about those finches. A single population gets split up, maybe by flying to different islands. Over time, each group adapts to its new home, and eventually they become so different, they're new species. On the tree, we call that speciation, and it looks like a fork in the road, one branch splitting into 2 or more new ones. The tree also explains loss. I mean, what happens when a family line dies out? Well, its journey on the tree is over. Its branch just stops. It gets cut short and never reaches the present day at the top. Extinction on the tree of life is simply a dead end. Okay, but an idea this revolutionary, well, it needs a mountain of proof. So Darwin spent the next 2 decades doing just that, gathering evidence, and he found that his tree of life idea explained all sorts of patterns in nature that before had been totally mystifying. Take how we classify life. For centuries, biologists grouped animals based on really simple similarities. Things with wings go here, things with fins go over there. But Darwin's tree gave it a much deeper meaning. It wasn't just about what looks similar, it was about family history. You group organisms based on how recently they shared a great-great-great-great-grandparent.
And you find confirmation for this in some really weird hidden places. For example, why on earth would a human embryo, a crocodile embryo, and the embryo of this little worm-like thing all share this obscure structure called a notochord? It makes no sense unless we all inherited it from a very, very ancient common ancestor. It's a clue to our shared branch way down the tree.
The tree also explains where animals live. Darwin realized that evolution happens locally.
New species pop up in a particular place from ancestors that were already living there. So the map of life isn't random at all. It actually tells a story of ancestry, migration, and isolation.
And the classic case study for this is Australia, right? Why is this one continent filled with all these marsupials, kangaroos, koalas, wombats that are so rare everywhere else? Well, it's because their ancestors were there when Australia broke off and drifted away from the other continents. They then spent millions of years evolving in complete isolation, creating this incredible, unique branch on the Tree of Life.
And finally, there's the fossil record. The Tree of Life makes a really clear prediction. The oldest, most ancient ancestors should be found in the deepest, oldest layers of rock. As you move up through the layers toward the present, you should find fossils that look more and more like modern species. And guess what? That's exactly what paleontologists find, time and time again.
So, Darwin had his big idea. He had mountains of evidence. He had solved the mystery of mysteries. So you'd think he'd be shouting it from the rooftops, right? Nope. He kept it almost totally secret for 20 years.
I mean, just look at this timeline. He's got the core idea all worked out by 1838. But then, in 1844, a different book about evolution comes out, and he watches as his friends and colleagues just tear it to shreds publicly. Being a very cautious man, Darwin got scared and locked his own, much more powerful work away. He didn't publish until 1859, and only because he found out someone else was about to beat him to it. And this is the incredible irony of the story. The man who would ignite one of the biggest debates in human history was, personally, terrified of conflict. He wasn't some fiery revolutionary. He was a quiet, gentle man who knew his idea was going to cause an absolute uproar, and he dreaded it. And that kind of leaves us with this final thought. The science itself is one thing, but the story of Darwin reminds us of the incredible personal courage it can take to finally share an idea that you know is going to change everything, to forever alter how we see ourselves and our tiny yet connected place in the vast history of life.